Sage Accpac ERP allows you to track and manage your company's expenditures and capital investments even if you don't use the Sage Accpac inventory module. In this tutorial, we'll show you how to do this using Sage Accpac purchase orders, and again, inventory control is not required for the method we'll demonstrate. In the PO system, you can create ad hoc items on the fly, or you can create items during setup for a more disciplined approach. In this tutorial, we'll take the more disciplined item-based approach. So now let's jump in and take a look. We'll start by going to the menu tree and expanding purchase orders and selecting PO Setup. Notice the icons for account sets, items, vendor details, and weight units of measure. These icons will only be present if you're running purchase orders without the inventory module. Now, before we can begin generating POs, there are several setup steps. Account sets are mandatory and must be set up first. As in other Sage Accpac modules, account sets allow you to create codes that link the purchase of items with the appropriate GL accounts. So let's open account sets, and we'll add one that we can use for purchase of general office supplies such as our copy machine paper, toner cartridges, etc. For the code, let's enter OFFSUP, and for description, office supplies. Now we'll move to the General Ledger Accounts section. In a batch system, we must have a holding or clearing account for transactions. This account is used to hold the dollar amounts in a liability account until the invoice arrives from the vendor. Using the Finder, let's select the appropriate account by filtering by description contains clearing, and in our demo system, we have a non-inventory payables clearing account number 2045, which we'll select. And for the expense account, we'll again use the Finder and enter Office, and we'll select the 6500 Office Supplies account. Now we'll click Add to save the new account set. In our demo system, we've also created account sets for other types of purchases that we'd like to track. Let's take a look by clicking the Next button. Here we have an account set for professional fees that we would use for services such as those provided by our CPA and legal counsel, and you can see that these expenses will point to account 6000 for accounting and legal fees. And we have one for repairs and maintenance, and it points to our 6580 repairs and maintenance account. And finally, we have one for our computer and network related purchases. We can even set up the system to account for capitalizing costs. So in our example, when we're buying computers and servers, we can use this system's account set to put these purchases in an asset account called 1510 Computer and Systems Equipment. Let's close this window, and now we're ready to move to the second setup step, which is creating our purchasing items. Your approach to creating items depends on the level of detail that you want to track. For a less detailed approach, you can create high-level items such as office supplies. Alternatively, if you require more detail, you can create specific items for everything that you commonly purchase. In this tutorial, we'll take the high-level, less detailed approach and create an item called office supplies. Let's assign an item number of 650 and a description, office supplies. Next, we'll open the Finder and select the office supplies account set that we created in the previous step. For this item, we're not concerned with weight unit of measure, but we do need to enter a unit of measure under the Units tab. Here we'll type EA for each and click Add. So whether we're purchasing pencils or copy machine paper, we'll use the office supplies item number on our purchase orders. And before we move on, notice that we've also created general items for repairs and maintenance, professional fees, and computers and systems. Now we're ready to move to the third step, which is setting up vendor details. This step is optional and may be beneficial if you're taking the detailed item approach that we discussed earlier. This allows you to link vendors with your items and specify item costs and vendor item numbers, which are then automatically inserted on your POs. Since we're taking the higher level approach on our items, we won't need this feature, and similarly, we also don't need to set any weight units of measure for our example. So now that we've gone through the setup steps, let's dive into processing a PO and see what happens. From the menu tree, we'll select PO Transactions, and we'll skip the requisition and directly enter a purchase order. On the PO form, we'll use the Finder to select the vendor. Note that the vendors that you'll see here are those that you've set up in accounts payable. Let's go ahead and select Grant Office Supplies. Now let's enter a description, Office Supplies, and we'll accept the defaults in the remaining header fields and jump down to the Details grid. Starting with the Item field, let's enter our Office Supplies item number, which you may recall is 650. We'll overwrite the description with the actual item we're purchasing, which in this case will be a case of copy paper. And in the Quantity Ordered field, we'll enter 10, and for unit cost, we'll enter $35.99. And now we'll post the PO, pass on printing, and close the window. Now let's assume that we've received the items and we need to create a receipt entry. So let's open Receipts Entry and tab down to the PO number field. Here we'll use the Finder to select the last PO entered. Now we'll receive all of the items on the PO by hitting the Receive All button. Now you can see that the Quantity Received field shows that all 10 of the items have been received. Now we'll post the receipt and we'll pass on printing and close the window. For the next step, let's assume that we've received the invoice from our vendor and it's ready for processing. To do this, we'll open Invoice Entry, and again, let's assume that we have the vendor's invoice on our desk and we see that the invoice number is 99990, which we'll enter here. Now using the Finder, let's select the receipt number, and now all of the details are pulled in from the receipt. After verifying the quantity and price, we'll post the invoice, and the message informs us that the posting completed, and we'll close the message and the window. Now let's process the batch of work that we've just completed, which will send our transactions to the GL. To do this, we'll go to the menu tree and select PO Periodic Processing, Day End Process, and we'll click the button to start the process. And while it's running, it's important to note that we've set up our demo system to post all transactions through to the general ledger. From the message, you can see that a GL transaction has been created. Let's close the message and take a look at the GL transaction by going to the menu tree and expanding General Ledger, and we'll select GL Transactions, then Batch List. Let's look at the last two batches. In the first one, from purchase orders, the items correctly debited the office supplies account and credited the holding or clearing account. And advancing to the next batch, this one came from the AP invoice and credits the payables account and debits the clearing account. And with that, we've verified that the GL postings are correct. So to recap, you can use the Sage Accpac Purchase Order module to manage expenditures and capital investments even if you don't use inventory control. Give us a call if you need assistance with this or any other feature in your Sage Accpac system. Well, that's it for this tutorial. Bye for now.